One of the good things about talking with having not much free time at all is that I'm obliged to go straight to the point. Normally I make a long introduction. Sometimes it's longer than the subject itself, but not having much time, I'm obliged to get straight to the point. In Tibetan, identity based on the so-called 5 aggregates. What happens is that every now and again, and we ask ourselves, what is this? Or we ask ourselves, this person, what's he like? He or she like? That situation, what is it? That place, what is it? What happens is that we stop in front of a photograph. What happens is that we see something, and every time we see a situation, we find ourselves in front of a person. It's as if we were making a photograph. And that photograph is static. That photograph is nothing more than a perspective of what was happening at a certain point in time. And we generalize that photograph as if it were reality. That person is like this. That situation is like this. This place is this, that, and the other is this, like this, or like that. We have a fixed view. Every time we ask of this or that, or this person, or whatever it might be, already it's not there. He or she, or the place, the situation is not there. When we say this is like this, the minute we say this is like this, the thing that has already changed. But on the other hand, when we say this is, even when we come to I am, we get fixated on the photograph. And the interesting thing is that the subject very often has more power than the object. Also because in the present moment, what exists of the past? The subject or the object? What exists? It's the subject, the subject that perceives today, the subject that perceives the past. That's how we view the past. But the interesting thing is that when we look at the past, we think, we believe that we are recalling something objective, when in reality it's actually we're an observer. We do the same with the present and also the future. But if we observe with attention, it's a photograph. And in front of that photograph, we generalize everything and create an idea, an identity. And then we relate with that situation, that person, or with even ourselves, or whatever it might be, through that identity we created. One of the first points of Buddhist philosophy is impermanence, also of our aggregates. The aggregates is body and mind in a few words. When we look at the impermanence of aggregates, we say, I am not a person like this, I'm not a sad person. I have moments of sadness. I'm not who is in a bad mood, but I have moments of being in a bad mood. I'm not a person who is alone and feels lonely, but I have moments of solitude, of loneliness. I have moments of joy, of satisfaction, of everything. They're moments. But when we give this name to something, what happens is even if the object transforms and can't even sustain the identity we've given, we still grasp to that identity. It's as if, it's like the soup, the story of the soup, which I've told many times. It's been quite a long time since I last told the story. Also because I've changed. By dint of telling the story of the soup, by dint of telling the story so much, I myself changed. I don't know why, but for some reason I didn't like soup. Anyway, I had this idea that soup was horrible. I couldn't help it. For more than 10 years in the south of India, dinner was around 5 o'clock in the evening. When in the heat of India, most of the time we had the tupa, Tibetan tupa, with Tibetan pasta. So it was Tibetan soup was created for high altitudes, but then they brought it to the south of India where it was very, very hot. So I developed an aversion. There were also the collateral side effects that developed for the health of people. So when you're at 40 degrees temperature, it's different from being in Tibet. Okay, the soup was served hot, and we had only half an hour to eat it, so we had to eat it really quickly, because then there was a debating session afterwards, and so we perspired a lot. Anyway, so I had this kind of trauma of soup. So I developed this idea, I do not like soup, and I hung on to that idea. So it wasn't a conceptual thing, but I didn't like soup after this experience. One day, I was in Holland, and the thing they eat most of all in Holland is sandwiches and soup, it seems to me. Without offending anybody, but it seems like that. That's my experience, without wanting to offend anyone. We went to a pre-congress. It was an internal congress within a big congress where the speakers were present. We were there at lunch. And obviously, what was there for lunch? There was sandwiches and soup. And then I didn't want to eat sandwiches, I can't remember why. So I found myself with a bowl of soup in front of me at lunchtime. Okay, soup in the evening when it's cold, okay, I can understand that. This was at lunchtime. I was there with the soup in front of me while I was eating it. Somebody who asked me who knows me well said, how's the soup then, hey? And I was like, hey, what do you think? Soup at lunchtime? Well, it's disgusting, horrible. As people's, we hear often the criticism, the Dutch people don't know how to eat, better to go back to tea. So this person understood my reaction. But the truth was that I actually was enjoying the soup. The taste was good. The texture was good. The temperature was right. I remember well now, even now. I finished the first bowl, and my instinct, I want another bowl. That was good. Somebody asked, Somebody asked me, do you want another one? I said, no, no, I don't like soup. And I didn't eat it. What I realized that time was that it was stronger in me, the identity. I do not like soup. I'm a person who doesn't like soup. It was stronger than the experience. It was stronger than the direct experience of the soup itself. The direct experience, what did it tell me? I was enjoying the soup. But I was grasping to my identity that I do not like soup. And therefore I had to justify the reality around me that there was something wrong, that I was enjoying the soup. And I shouldn't be enjoying the soup because I'm a person who doesn't like soup. Well, you know, it was almost a shame. I was shameful that I was enjoying the soup. It was going against my principles. I don't mean principles, moral principles, but when we have our identity strongly with regards to something, what is reality for us, and to accept that it's not like this, and is forcing ourselves to accept that reality is not as I perceive it. So we grasp onto our position, not because that's the most logical thing, or because it's our direct experience, because we have a strong attachment, because we have a strong attachment to our vision of the world, a kind of pride we have. Therefore, we're continually in transformation, mind, body, and then mind and body. This is another subject, but they're two manifestations of the same thing. We have the tendency to see them and experience them as separate, but when in fact we can't live the two separately, one from the other. Anyway, they're continually in transformation. We don't perceive that continual transformation, and we remain, and we relate to this continual transformation through the photo, the fixed image that we have, and we believe that that's reality. But very often when we say it's already been. If either, whether it be a judgment, or when we say it is, it's already gone. What I want to say is that there's a change in attitude which is really helpful, I believe. That instead of saying that person is, to say that person had that behavior, did this. Instead of generalizing the person and putting a label on that person, we observe the actions, characteristics. There was this behavior. If somebody lied, it doesn't mean that that person is a liar. Because if it were like this, we would all be liars. Most of us have all told lies at some point. And also told the truth, without doubt. If I generalize that person is a liar, that my attention goes towards the person, the being. If I don't like the behavior, I go against the person because he's a liar. But on the other hand, if I focus on the behavior, this behavior, lying, is not good for me or others, then I have more, how can I say, it's not only awareness. I go against. I judge the action, not the person. Because we are really good at generalizing. It's as if when you walk, it happened to me when I heard this phrase so many times from different people. I'm walking in the wood, I see some rubbish on the ground, a piece of plastic. I look at the people. Why people? I agree that it's not right, it's not correct, etc., to throw rubbish in the woods. But I can't generalize about people in general, as if I weren't a person myself. Or I see something done by a certain ethnicity, a person of a certain ethnicity, and then I generalize to the whole ethnic group. This generalizing, what happens is that if there's something I don't, for example, if there's rubbish and I don't like it in the wood, and I generalize about people, I create a kind of aversion towards people. On the other hand, if I have clarity and look at this behavior that's not right, where direct my aversion towards the behavior. And they're two things that are totally different. It's interesting to see in our society, even from a point of view of, or formal point of view, when a person does something which is considered not correct, what is chastised? The action or the person? The person. From when we're children, a child does something that he shouldn't do. It's not the action that is chastised, so that you don't repeat the action, in which case you would learn, but it goes towards the person of the child. The child is criticized, chastised. If we see in the context a concept in the law, when a person does something wrong, there's no justice until that person is punished. And then once that punishment is carried out, there's justice. I don't really understand this, but that's my problem here. What happens is that we don't talk about that behavior. How can I avoid that behavior that repeats itself? In many aspects, if we do this, it's as if, how can I say? What comes to mind immediately? I'm in a boat, and there's a point in which water is coming into the boat. There's water that's entering. So it's the fault of the boat, so I'm going to smash the boat to pieces with a hammer instead of looking at the hole in the boat and saying, how am I going to fix this? If there's a person who has a behavior which I consider not positive, it's not against the person that I help to change that behavior. What happens when you punish an attitude which is not considered moral? Other problems, conflicts are created instead of resolving the problem. Therefore, it becomes important for us, at least for myself. I'm at least trying to do this for internal dynamics. To see the internal dynamics that bring us to certain behaviors. One of the things that we do is we see a situation, a person, and also ourselves, instead of having the awareness that we, like everything, is a continual flow, which is in transformation. We make a photo and we have a fixed image of that photo. That person is, I am, this is like this and that is like that. Instead of focusing on the behavior that should be changed, on the action that should be avoided, etc., we concentrate on the person. I think that's quite clear now. But here there's another important aspect. We have, as I said, yes, we have body and mind, as I said before. The body and mind are, I believe, two manifestations of the same thing. An image that came to mind, which is, maybe one day I'll find a better one, as if we were in a room. We have two doors. Indoors, they're called the doors of the senses in Tibetan. Let's imagine there's a door, there's one that... So two people coming through the door, and through two different doors in the same room. The room is the person, what enters from each of our senses, enters in that room there. Doesn't matter whatever thought we might have. Any thought we might have in any interaction, any physical space, comes into that room. Therefore, without going into details, without going to Buddhist vision of this, body and mind are inseparable in Tibetan Buddhism. Even when you're a Buddha, when we talk about the qualities of Buddha, enlightened being, there's always body and mind. The status of Buddhahood is the transformation, total transformation from the point of view, in a positive way, of mind and body together. It's called the state, the union of clear light and illusory body. But it's not the moment to talk about this. But what happens is that body and mind are always the same. It grows subtle and very subtle levels. And there's an attitude that every time, every now and again, an attitude that arises in Buddhist context, let's say, every now and again. And Vajrayana Buddhism, so-called, I call it so-called because even if we belong to a Mahayana tradition, doesn't mean to say that we're not, doesn't mean to say necessarily that we're funded, but that's another subject. But there's great emphasis on the mind. Once there was a meeting in India, in Bodh Gaya, in the 60s, 70s, something like that. There was a Lama who the Lama who went there with Lama Ganshin. He told us about this meeting, this big convention they'd organized. They had an encounter of the most important leaders of the major religions in the world. And they came to talk about the differences between their respective faiths. And after days of talking, they arrived at this question. At the base of it, what is the difference between Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism? Each of them believe in reincarnation and the law of karma. There are different ways of explaining it. So what's the main difference between these three traditions? And there's a Tibetan Lama. He gave the only answer that everybody was happy with. The main difference was that in Jainism, we give emphasis to the body. I don't know if you have an idea of Jainism. It wouldn't work in the West. It would be very difficult to live by. It's a tradition in which we wear white. The practitioners and the most elevated practitioners are completely nude. So they follow a broom so that they can get rid of the insects so as not to kill them, and they have a cloth to filter the water. Their concept of non-violence is present in every single action, and also non-attachment. He said that, but in Jainism, the emphasis was on the body, how one should react physically in order not to be violent towards anybody. There's a very strong component of very strict rules on how to walk, how to eat. So in order not to cause suffering for beings. And that's why when they walk, they broom with feathers so that they can brush aside any insect in front of them so they don't kill or hurt anyone. So they can't use cars, etc. So the emphasis is on the body. And this master said in the Hindu religion there's a great emphasis on speech, the sound, the correct pronunciation, etc. This is a very important part of the sound, without going into detail, but all the recitation, the mantras, with uttering the sounds very precisely. There's a very interesting science behind it, very beautiful. And it's said that the Buddhist and with the Buddhist tradition, the emphasis on the mind. All the three traditions take care of body and mind, but each one puts the emphasis on mind, body, and speech. But each one puts an emphasis on a different thing. But at the end, they were all in agreement. This is to say that every night I've perceived we so-called Buddhists, every now and again we develop this kind of, the important thing is the mind, to change the mind. How do you behave? How you behave is relative, it doesn't really matter. How do you speak is kind of not that important. The important thing is the mind. That's not what we find in the teachings. It's said that the objective, a final objective, is to domesticate our mind. But we should never we will never be able to control the mind without controlling the body and the actions of the body. Therefore, what happens is that, so he explained it was Lampotato who explained this, the master, the Theravada master who came here a few years ago. He explained in these terms, the objective is to change our mind, transform our mind. But the mind is made up of such strong habits, so it's difficult to redirect the mind. And it's because of that, to change the mind, we must change the external habits, the way we speak, the way we react physically, changing the habits of the body and of speech to help. They're essential to direct the mind. And this is a very beautiful aspect of the Theravada tradition, because they have very simple rules. Incredible simplicity, but at the same time, the fact that it's very simple doesn't mean that it's easy to follow. Why is it difficult? Because we have these habits which are contrary to this. In order to change our internal habits, we must put effort into our external behavior. Therefore, for example, one of the most important things is our speech. Written or spoken. The speech now includes what's written now in messages on the cell phone. What happens is, if I change the way I speak, I naturally, after a bit of time, it's not immediate, I change the way I think. Therefore, if we recognize that effectively, if you agree that when we see somebody, something, what happens, what we see is that is a moment, is an aspect, it's a manifestation, it's not the person, it's not the place. Instead of judging the person, so we see it in the context of the situation. Instead of saying the person is, we don't say that person is. We say, I perceive that this person had this behavior, carried out this behavior, also because how many times each one of us have been judged wrongly? How many times has it happened to us? Has it ever happened to you? So somebody is accused us of having a certain attitude, a certain feeling. It happens often, right? So we can imagine what we do to others. We're different in many aspects. So looking at the other, at the person and judging the motivation for their behavior just because we operate in that way is not a valid argument. How do we judge the other? Because we imagine ourselves in that situation. We use ourselves as a measure to judge the others. We use ourselves as a point of reference to judge the behavior of others, but we're different. Well, very similar in many aspects, but different in many. Therefore, instead of saying this person is, or this is, let's try and say this person had this behavior, behaved in this way. I have no problem saying this behavior is. Because when we say the person is, it happens that there's a proverb, there's a Tibetan proverb similar to one in Italian. The garden of the next door neighbor is always more beautiful, but in Tibetan we add, but one's own child is always right. Because what happens is that if I'm very attracted to a person, one of my children, I have a strong attraction, at a certain point, my child has a behavior which I consider to be negative. But if I didn't know my child, I would say, look at that person who's is like this, but I can't say my child is like this because I have a strong attraction to my child. I can't go against my child. What do we try to do? We try to justify his action because really he's a victim. We try and victimize our child. He did it because of this, that, and the other. But if I manage to distinguish behavior from the person, in my opinion, this behavior is not good. My aversion goes towards the behavior, not the person. This changes things enormously. I can say, child, that this behavior is not good at all. You should eliminate it. Doesn't mean to say I don't love you. I've got nothing against you, but I've got a hell of a lot against your behavior, but not to you. I don't know if that's clear, the difference. But in our everyday life, let me just, I'm going to repeat it again, sorry if I'm a bit boring, but in our everyday life, our tendency is to generalize. So the person, you are like this, you're that, he's like that, she's like that, they're like this. And we need to try and avoid once we say he is like this, I start relate to that person in function of that photograph. It's like the story of the soup. And if the person, and if the person, so if the person behaves in a way contrary to the image that I have, I say, well, today he's not being himself. And not only when you have our own vision of reality, to complicate things, I'm not going to open this subject, but when we have our own strong image, which we have, obviously, not being aware that it's our vision of reality, we want our vision to be reality. What happens when I find myself in a situation which doesn't correspond the direct experience as how I believe it should be, my perception of it. I try to change it. I go against the direct experience. In other words, we look for narratives that justify, that are consistent with our vision, with our sensations, with our beliefs, etc. If I am a lonely person, I look for narratives which justify the fact that I'm lonely. But then either because this person abandoned me, this person doesn't like me. It's the most incredible thing, is that I've seen so many times we manage to create situations as if we were looking for them deliberately to the correct word is not to justify, but to find a kind of a consistency, what we believe between what we feel inside with what we experience directly. Because I can't possibly have a wrong vision of what's going on. My vision is right. So because if I feel it, it's because other people abandon me. There's no two ways about it. If I'm angry, because there's something that's wrong. When actually, very, 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 very often, when somebody's angry, it's not because there's something that's not right. It's because if that were the case, we would always be angry, right? Because there's always something that's not right. And even what happens is then we have inner balances. There's certain aspects of our being. We don't know how to use them. Use these aspects of us. As we feel angry, there's a kind of unease, there's a physical component, there's the astrological aspects. But what I've seen is that in reality, it's as if the aspects are not negative or positive. It really depends on how we use them. In the tantric teachings in Buddhism, we talk very often of the 5 types of energies, of 5 types of actions: pacification, increasing, influencing, and opposition. And the fifth is the union of these 4. The opposition is the irate power. It's the force that opposes something. And in our life, we have this opposing power. There's nothing wrong with it, but the point is to use it well. It's just that very often we have sensations which bring us towards For example, this opposition, but we don't know how to use it. We have this instinct to oppose something, we don't know how to use it. And then we oppose. What happens is we oppose what isn't the real cause. I'm opening a few doors here which better to close and to come back to the main point, otherwise we'll be here forever. What I want to get to is that we perceive reality inevitably through our own filter. We know this, we've said it countless times, but it's not enough. At the same time, what we try to do is to continually create narratives and justifications around us, situations that justify, that validate our sentiments, sensations. A while back somebody asked me, why is it nice, enjoyable to criticize people? There are so many dynamics behind this. One of the main aspects is that I'm with you, and if I don't feel well, it's obviously your fault. And then I have to find out, and then I look for defects in you. And because I find defects because you this, that, and the other, because you did this, you did that, I find a narrative which is consistent with what I'm feeling inside, the unease, the aversion that I have inside of me. When we find this kind of consistence with inner and outer, we feel gratified. But it's a great illusion. Therefore, let's go to the point of departure where we started. Let's try to see not only that things are constantly in transformation, but to relate not to generalized image of those things. Also because if we were to ask, who am I? What do I know? Really, honestly speaking. The only thing I can manage to say is that I'm a flow of thoughts, sensations, experiences. And within this, you tell me, who's had for us, not even for a long time, just even a short time, let's say a day, not even a long period, a sensation that has been consistent throughout the day. Or a mental state, it's exactly the same for a whole day. We're all on the, so I forgot the name, on, it's called the Russian mountain in Italian. It's when you go up and down. I love you or I hate you. Because within us, I project what's within into the outer world. It's called, we sometimes call it a window, but it's more than a window. We live this kind of funfair ride up and down. So with a mirror, we touch and it reflects. It's not really a mirror. It's that we perceive everything, we experience everything through our own filter. There's not giving and going and coming. So when I go to look, it's already transformed through my own filter. Okay, it's a mirror in that I see myself through the other, but it's not that they reflect exactly me. It's a part of me. So the conclusion is today, let's try not to generalize. on ourselves or others. Let's try not to say this is, I am. I'm not. In this, maybe now I am, but this is not me. In this moment he's behaving like this, or at least, let's say, it appears to me that he's behaving that way. That's perception, is that he's behaving this. But it doesn't mean to say that that person is, the place is, the situation is. There are moments in which it manifests in this way or that way. Let's try to judge the behavior, attitudes, physical, verbal, mental attitudes, and not the person. The center is Italy, is Europe is. Instead of living this roller coaster, that's the word I was looking for. The government is. Let's give. We could focus. Let's try to interact so that certain points that we find negative that transform. Okay, this person has behaved which I don't like. I don't like it, so neither do I. What can we do? The very strange thing is that. Okay, I'm saying I generalized. If we see a behavior in somebody that we don't like, it's as if I had aversion with that person, I get angry. It's as if we've resolved the situation. It's all okay. But however I'm horrible to you, I treat you really badly because your behavior is wrong. It doesn't help you in any way to transform or to change your behavior. So I go against the person, not the attitude, the behavior. When we should actually go against is not the person, but that behavior, that type of action that's not right. Therefore, instead of living this kind of reality of punishing, let's try and be constructive, not punitive. Let's try and change and transform behaviors that's negative. So, constructive rather than punitive. Let's try to bring this into our daily life, starting from our speech. Don't worry about, don't even think about how you should think or not think, but start with your speech. Try, give it a go. If you think this might be useful, give it a go for a week. Try it. For this week, I'm not going to say he is, she is. Certainly will speak less. But let's see if there's a change in the way we think. Okay? That's what I wanted to say to you today, share with you today. No, I'm not going to open other doors. That's all. Thank you very much for everyone to be here together with us, and let's just make the dedications. at dawn, at dusk, or night and midday. May the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to attain all of the, to achieve our realizations and sprinkle the paths of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Thank you very much. Tashidale. Have a nice day. Thank you.